What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Well, yesterday was an absolute whirlwind with Nintendo talking about their financials and then moving on to announce a Nintendo Direct and then doubling back to talk about the Switch 2, which I did a video on yesterday. You can check that out. But there's so much stuff hitting. We're going to try to go over all of that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about just devastating news. That's the only way it can be described for Xbox, as they've moved to close down a bunch of studios, with one in particular not going over well online, and now as people really questioning the future for the entire brand. So if you guys enjoy this video, make sure you hit that like button, helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawnwave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And of course, members for the channel do get Newswave early and ad-free. If you'd like to learn more about that, click the join button down below this video. And we're gonna start today with EA, as they also talked with investors about their current fiscal year and some of the releases that we can expect. Like, we can see this slide here, and it looks pretty straightforward with, we know that, of course, the Tales of Kinzera, EA Sports F1 24, EA Sports NHL 25, there's college football, Madden, Sports FC, a partner title. They also mentioned 2 unannounced titles in fiscal year 25. This will run all the way through to March of next year. 1 partner title expected in Q4, as they outline here, and 1 owned intellectual property, which is not included in the table above. They expect to provide more details on the timing at a later date. Speculation, of course, immediately pointed to Dragon Age, and then also Jeff Grubb mentioned it's Dragon Age, and it does say unannounced, but that could also technically mean unannounced in the sense that it's not announced with its release date and up here on this chart. So Dragon Age does kind of have to come out, I don't say soon, but like in the next year, I figure, since then they would also want to get Mass Effect out there. But Dragon Age has been in development for quite some time, and yeah, it seems like it's about time for us to see it, and then hopefully put it out, I'd say, by the end of this year to make it for the holiday season. Also, on top of the talk around Dragon Age and these other games that are releasing for the year, they also did talk about Battlefield, specifically Andrew Wilson, and we know what happened after Battlefield 2042, which did not go well, just in the live service space. They seemed incredibly unprepared for the game to come out, and then they worked to fix it through like 7 seasons or something. But we can see this is posted up over on VGC, who did transcribe his call with investors, where he says, "This is the largest Battlefield team in franchise history. A few weeks ago, I was visiting with the teams, and I couldn't be more excited about what they showed and what we were able to play. I've just spent a whole bunch of time with the collective Battlefield team playing what they're building, and it is going to be another tremendous," you guessed it, live service, which, yeah, I mean, that's what they're pushing towards for Battlefield, where they're looking more on the multiplayer side to really try to compete, or at least just grab a piece of that pie that Warzone and Fortnite, those kind of games, have completely taken over. Battlefield used to be right there with Call of Duty, and it's just kind of fallen off ever since we moved, especially to the Battle Royale stuff, but even kind of before that, they've just been struggling for a while to get Battlefield back in its heyday, when it was really hitting with things like Bad Company 2, Battlefield 3. I feel like they say this, though, like every time leading up to a Battlefield game, so here's hoping this time they can get it right. It also sounds like it's going to be a little while before we have it actually in our hands. I'm hoping by next year they're ready to at least show us something with it, but still, I think we're a ways off from release. Oh, and while we're about to talk about Microsoft and them closing down studios, they did have an announcement yesterday. They have a new controller, which you can see over on at news.xbox.com. It's the Fire Vapor Special Edition controller. I want to also point out this headline was very different the beginning of the day yesterday, where it said, "Feel the burn today," with the Fire Vapor Special Edition controller. That is not a great headline for a time where you shut down a bunch of studios. Anyway, it is available today in select Xbox markets worldwide. It's exclusively through the Microsoft Store at $70. It has a dynamic theme that kind of has like this fiery swirls on the background, I guess. You just plug the controller in and you'll get those. But yeah, if you're looking for a fiery orange swirl controller, it is available now. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Nintendo, as they did have their financials, and then we'll also talk a bit about their Direct that is coming up actually pretty soon. It's kind of expected the time it would be, but still, it is officially announced and confirmed at this time by the president of Nintendo. First, though, we can take a look at some of their financials here, which we can see over on their investors relations page. They did update the total Switch numbers that have shipped out to consumers, currently sitting now at 141.32 million. We expected this since it was only like a couple 100,000 off from 140 million. This means that they were able to sell in this previous quarter to close out the fiscal year 1.96 million Switch systems. That is technically down 36% year over year from last quarter, but still they were able to meet their expectations in the forecast that they set, which was right around 15 or 15.5 million. They ended up shipping out 15.7 million total for the fiscal year. Now, fiscal year to fiscal year, that is down 12.6%, but to be honest, that's not as much of a decline as you would expect when comparing a system's 7th year to its 6th year. Usually by now, it's just falling off a cliff. And it very well could still do that now that we're into this next fiscal year, and technically the Switch also into its 8th year. I mean, eventually you gotta stop running out. You gotta run out of people to sell the system too, right? But nonetheless, Nintendo, get this, forecasting 13.5 million Switch systems for this current fiscal year. That would end the fiscal year in April, or right at the end of March 2025, at 154.82 million. And yeah, that would essentially just pass the DS and really coming up on the PS2. I know there's a lot of discussion around where the PS2 really is. Is it 155? Is it 160? But for Nintendo, when they're comparing to themselves, that would make the Switch the most successful system they've ever released. And that'd be very, very impressive stuff for them to get to, considering I still think they'd be shipping Switch systems after that. So maybe they'll pass that 160 million and just put aside any kind of controversy around the PS2 sales at all. But I mean, you get to a point of 154.82. Do you really care about those kind of comparisons? Because, well, Nintendo at this time has actually profited the most of any generation. Any other time in Nintendo's history, the Switch generation is it for them. Yes, that does include the Wii and the DS combined, that period of time for them. So just an incredible run for them. And it also shows in the software where they're well above 1.2 billion pieces. Oh, and speaking of the software, they did release some updated numbers, and we can take a look at some of the million unit sellers. And I threw in a few other ones here that are kind of interesting. So Princess Peach Showtime, that did sell 1.22 million in this previous quarter. Remember, the quarter did run from January to March, so it wasn't exactly the entire quarter for Princess Peach Showtime to sell. And I would say that's actually pretty good with the limited amount of time it had to sell in the quarter. Same with Mario vs. Donkey Kong. That was 1.12 million. So, I mean, that was a pretty basic, pretty standard remake, I would say, for them, tapping a Game Boy Advance game and not doing too much really to it to differentiate it from its Game Boy Advance counterpart. So I'd say Nintendo probably pretty happy with the sales for both of those games, all things considered, with their expectations. Get this, though. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. It sold 1.39 million units this past quarter. That brings the total up to just under 62 million sold for Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. In fact, if you go and get the Wii U version of the game and add it up, it's just about right at what, 70 million. It's absolutely ridiculous for this entry of Mario Kart. It just will not slow down. Mario Brothers Wonder did sell another 1.48 million this past quarter, bringing it to 13.44 million. And I wanted to point out two other ones because I'd say they are achieving well above what people were expecting for these games. Kirby and the Forgotten Land now at 7.52 million sold, which makes me think that, yes, the next Kirby game probably going to get an even larger budget. Who knows what else they can do there after what they were able to, I would say, break through and accomplish with Kirby and the Forgotten Land. It might have like a big Mario Odyssey kind of moment there. Not that Forgotten Land wasn't massive for the franchise, what it is able to do, but just going to that next level, really. And then Pikmin 4, 3.48 million sold. That is, for Pikmin, that is incredibly impressive. So yes, software for Nintendo along with the hardware continues to sell throughout that 7th year and now into the 8th year. Now with that lofty goal of 13.5 million Switch systems for this current fiscal year, well, we expect there to be many more games since, I mean, we're coming up to the last two that are technically in front of us right now. Paper Mario Thousand Year Door, Luigi's Mansion HD 2, and we expect, I guess, Nintendo World Championships to appear in some way, the NES edition. But what else could they have for us? Well, we expect a Direct to be happening soon, right? Well, apparently Furukawa just wanted to show up on X last night and just let everyone know, which we can see here. He says, we'll be holding a Nintendo Direct this June regarding the Nintendo Switch software lineup for the latter half of 2024, but please be aware, there will be no mention of the Nintendo Switch successor during that presentation. This is a very smart thing to do because, like, seriously, the sentence or two before that, he just told everyone, hey, we're going to be announcing that Switch successor later on this year. And again, I did a video on that if you want to find out more about my thoughts there. But for this Nintendo Direct specifically, okay, we're not looking at anything with Nintendo's next system. Not that games that are there couldn't also technically have Switch 2 ports, but I'd expect in this case, Nintendo to kind of do what they've been doing for months now, almost a good part of a year, and release smaller titles as well as remasters and remakes. Now, there is obviously the big elephant in the room, and that is Metroid Prime 4. It's gotta be there. Like, you gotta date it, it's gotta be ready to roll, I think, this holiday, because while it could still be a cross-gen release and get some sort of update for the Switch 2, it was promised on the current system back in 2017, so the fact that we now have, it's weird to say, but we've had them talk about Switch 2 sooner than we had Metroid Prime 4 revisited is very odd, but either way, I think that is a good time for them to do it, and if I had to take a guess, we'll just stick with the usual. The second full week of June, kind of in that E3, not E3 time period, since Microsoft will go in during that weekend. Then you'll have like Ubisoft Forward set up. Why not throw the Nintendo Direct in there as well? Next up, let's talk about devastating news for Microsoft that, I mean, seriously, has people online looking at this wondering, okay, what is Microsoft doing here? And will there be an Xbox, I mean, years from now at this point? Because it does kind of look a bit sketchy right now from Microsoft's side, almost like there's multiple people trying to fly the plane at once. But let's go over where this started from exactly. IGN put out a report as they appeared to attain an email that Matt Booty sent out yesterday morning that was detailing a bunch of studio shutdowns and some that were actually being reformed and even merged into others, which we can see this posted up by IGN, where they say, these changes are grounded in prioritizing high-impact titles and further investing in Bethesda's portfolio of blockbuster games and beloved worlds which you have nurtured over many decades. He goes on to say that Tango Gameworks, Arcane Austin, Alpha Dog are all being shut down. Roundhouse is being merged into ZeniMax Online Studios. Now, the thing with Arcane Austin, they were supposed to be working on Redfall because they had DLC that they had to deliver, right? Well, that's now been canceled, and Microsoft will provide make-good offers for people who bought the DLC. They go on to say, with this consolidation of our Bethesda studio teams, so that we can invest more deeply in our portfolio of games and new IP. A small number of roles across select Bethesda publishing and corporate teams will also be eliminated. We are making these tough decisions to create capacity to increase investment in other parts of our portfolio and focus on our priority games. So the shift that they're mentioning here to high impact games or priority games, to me, sounds like they want a new Fallout game, and in that sense, looking around, how do we do this? Well, we either have to reform certain studios, merge some in with others, shut some down, lay people off, and figure out how we can get a team set over, and I guess in their mind, take resources from one, put it into, but it's weird for them to say that because it's Microsoft, $3 trillion company. You feel like if they want it to happen, sure, a studio may not be working on a new IP that they decided to start up months ago, and they're going to shift over to run support and help get the new Fallout game out. So it's weird that you would hear them go, we got to cut down studios and move people around in that sense, because when you look at Tango Gameworks, which that's the biggest one here. I know Arcane Austin has kind of been beaten down after Redfall, and the other two, where we have Roundhouse and Alpha Dog, they're not well known, but Arcane Austin, while I know they put out Redfall, and it was not a good game, trust me, I played all the way through it, I beat it, it's not a good game, they have made good games in the past, and it does sound like that game was very demoralizing for the studio, and if it is true, as reports mention, that 75% or so of the original staff had left because of that game, what are you really left with, I guess? But if you have at least some of the leadership still in place, you feel like you could staff up again and maybe make a run at a new game from that studio to, I mean, think about it this way. They're going out on Redfall, a studio that's brought us games like Prey and Dishonored are going to be last remembered for Redfall. So that is definitely a shame. But when I look at Tango Gameworks still, It's weird because Microsoft has talked about how they want to establish more of a foothold in Japan, that market. But then they shut down their one Japanese studio that they got because of the Bethesda and ZeniMax acquisition. Like, it just fell into their lap and, oh yeah, look, they have Hi-Fi Rush. That game was awesome. It was so unique and different from what Microsoft had been putting out. And I think that's why it stood out to so many people and was praised so highly, because it was genuinely unique, interesting, and felt like an intellectual property that maybe they could continue to push and build on. And you see the talent at Tango Gameworks back up the truck and just drop money on them and build this budget up so they come out with something even better. Maybe they have other ideas. It's definitely worth, I would say, fostering the talent there and building them up to see what big time game they could release. Instead, a little more than a year after Hi-Fi Rush comes out, studio shuttered. And while just the online community right now is definitely questioning Microsoft and Phil Spencer and Matt Booty, and rightfully so when you look around at some of the things that are happening currently, I do believe there is this struggle going on currently at Microsoft between one side, where you have a lot of the numbers guys, the executives, Satya Nadella, I'm sure, who just wrote off or just signed off to spend $70 billion in Activision Blizzard. They have Phil Spencer, Sarah Bond, and Matt Booty over here trying to run Xbox. And I feel like there is a bit of a clash because we've seen it in public statements between some of these executives where it's completely contradicting one and the other. And it's very strange. This decision to me, it feels like it came from the number side, the profit and loss side, and I kind of feel like they won out on it, and that's why we're seeing these results. And then you have to think about the studios even around, say, Tango Gameworks and Arcane Austin and the others, because they're looking at this like, whoa, they put out Hi-Fi Rush. That game did really well critically. People seem to really like it. It fit in well with Game Pass, and like, they're gone? Just like a little more than a year later. What's that mean for us exactly? So morale, it didn't get better after that. And if you look around right now, if I'm Ninja Theory and I'm about to put out Hellblade 2, and this game has been talked about being 8, maybe 10 hours if you stretch it, and it's not a live service title, which is something I think a lot of the top people at Microsoft want, what does that mean for the future of Ninja Theory? Those are the questions I'm sure that are being asked within Microsoft, because it's certainly being asked outside of Microsoft right now online. So not a good day for them at all. And there's still a lot to go over here. And I think we're going to save it for the podcast this weekend, because it is looking kind of sketchy right now for Xbox going into their big E3, not E3 event next month. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about Media Molecule, which was another studio. This one was Sony, that felt like it was on the bubble, but no, it seems like they're continuing along. In fact, they are working on a new IP, a new game. At least we think it's a game. They made the creation tool essentially with Dreams, but in a recent interview, it seems like maybe that's not their path for this one. We can see this is posted up over on VGC, and it's actually transcribed from the Min-Max show with Ben Hansen, who was talking with Media Molecule co-founder Mark Healy, who did leave the studio last year, but you feel like Dreams, how that was kind of on its way out, and Media Molecule working on some other stuff, probably have some knowledge as to sort of what they're working on there, right? In fact, they say, I don't know exactly what the state their project is in now. I don't think it's secret news that they're working on a new IP, for example. I would dare to go as far as saying it's more of a game than a creative tool. From what I understand about it, Sony has still got a lot of faith in Media Molecule. At the very least, they're going to get to make this game. See, that's the thing. People do question, okay, why is Media Molecule even still around after Dreams? And that there has been discussion before about one of their big regrets being, we didn't get it on PC, and we should have. But if you've played Dreams or built stuff with Dreams, it is a very impressive piece of software. So you can look at that and go, okay, it didn't sell well. It wasn't a great game per se, but it was a good piece of software in what it was setting out to do, which is allow people to create other games. So it shows that there is a lot of talent within Media Molecule. I just think they got maybe a little too ambitious and it took over for too long. And in some regards, the executives, the people at Sony who were supposed to try to navigate through and guide them to the finish line, maybe gave them a little too much rope, a little too much slack on that one. So now maybe they're kind of steering them in the direction of making, as is mentioned here, more of a game as opposed to Dreams. And I am interested to see what they come up with. But as they mentioned here, they're at least going to get to make this next game. But the way Sony also is kind of looking around, as they have also cut studios, we'll see. Hopefully this one comes out and it's well, just played more than Dreams. It's well received and people more interested in it, because that was the other big thing with Dreams is it didn't go to PC and it seemed to kind of stagnate pretty quickly. And before we go to the comments of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, have you played Hi-Fi Rush? Wow, 70% say no. Hey, never too late to try out Hi-Fi Rush. It's in Game Pass. It's not like an incredibly expensive game. It's like half price of it. It's like $30. I do recommend checking out Hi-Fi Rush. Very, very interesting, very unique take on the action rhythm genre, I guess we can call it there. But I understand, looking at the engagement numbers that would be put out there, 3 million was the last one I saw. I don't think it equates to a ton of sales necessarily. So I'm sure the numbers, if you come in as the Microsoft numbers guy and you look at that, you go, well, why would we do this rather than take those funds and divert them over to the next Fallout game that has to take 4 or 5 years, but it's going to do really well because the show is really popular. It's unfortunate because there's a lot of creativity and a lot of talent at Tango Gameworks, and well, now they're kind of out there looking for positions, and the thing that's a shame is they're being broken up completely for the most part. Now, Shinji Mikami, new studio, might look to hire some of those people, but it's not going to be another Tango Gameworks that necessarily gets together and makes Hi-Fi Rush 2 because, oh yeah, Microsoft owns that IP, so good stuff. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Sean, who says, we get it, John, you like cell shading. I do, actually, because cell shading, I think, ages really, really well over time. I mean, look at games like Okami, Wind Waker, Killer 7, Jet Set Radio, Beautiful Joe. Those games you can fire up right now, even on the system that it came out on a flat screen TV, and it still looks pretty good. And in fact, if you upscale them through emulators or you have like an HDMI adapter for the back of that system that puts out a good signal, it still looks awesome. And in some cases, almost fits in with modern day gaming. So yes, I think cell shading can be incredibly creative, but also one that can stand the test of time. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. Was Nintendo's financials, their confirmation for a Nintendo Direct next month, the Switch 2, and do you think they'll be able to get to, actually, the DS numbers by the end of this fiscal year, March 31st, 2025 with the Switch? Then also, what about Microsoft closing down a bunch of studios, with one being Tango Gameworks? What do you think that means for the future of Microsoft here going forward? Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.